I've worked on ships for a long time, and let me tell you, you hear some pretty strange stories. At first, you laugh them off, crew members joking around, passengers making up ghost stories for fun. But 4 years ago, during a South American season, I had my own encounter, and I still can't explain what happened. Back then, I used to hang out with the Brazilians on board. Great people, fun, lively, always good company. One of them, the gift shop manager, was an interesting guy. He was constantly complaining about his team, saying they were lazy and making excuses to get out of work. The weirdest excuse? They claimed they kept seeing a little girl running around the gift shop late at night. Of course, none of us took it seriously. I mean, a ghostly little girl haunting the gift shop? It sounded ridiculous. Even the manager didn't believe it, at least, not until that one night. I remember it vividly. I was having a late-night coffee with the head of the photography department. The gift shop manager joined us, and he was extra grumpy that night, ranting about how he'd have to work extra hours because his team refused to stay in the shop. They're all terrified of this imaginary little girl, he said, rolling his eyes. We laughed it off, joked about how he should charge the ghost rent. None of us could have guessed what was about to happen. A few hours later, I was woken up by a phone call. It was the photo manager. Her voice was shaky as she said, "You need to come to my cabin." Now, I asked what was wrong, and all she said was, "It's the gift shop manager. He's here. He's crying." Something happened. I got dressed and rushed over. When I walked into the cabin, I froze. I've seen people upset before, homesick, stressed, even heartbroken. But this was different. He was curled up on the couch, shaking, his face pale as a sheet. His eyes were wide with fear, and tears were streaming down his face. I sat down next to him and asked what happened. At first, he couldn't speak. He just kept shaking his head. Finally, he managed to get the words out, and what he told me still gives me chills. He'd been working late in his office. His desk faces a long mirror that stretches across the wall in the clothing section of the shop. He was focused on paperwork when he heard something, a soft giggle. It was faint at first, but then it grew louder. He thought someone was playing a prank on him, so he looked up. That's when he saw it. In the mirror, there was a shadow, a small figure, like a child, peeking around the doorframe. But here's the thing, when he turned to look at the door, there was nothing there, the shadow only existed in the reflection. He said he felt paralyzed for a moment, staring at the mirror, hoping he was imagining it. But then he heard it again, a high-pitched giggle, followed by the sound of tiny footsteps running across the shop floor. That's when he bolted. He didn't even stop to grab his things. He ran out of the office, but the sounds followed him, the laughter, the footsteps, moving from the shop into the casino on the same deck. Hearing him describe it, I could feel the hairs on my arms standing up. But what really shook me was what my boss told me the next day. Apparently, about 20 years ago, a little girl had been traveling with her parents on this very ship. After a show at the theater, she'd been running ahead of them, playing around the gift shop. Eventually, she wandered into the casino and then to the atrium. If you've been on a cruise ship, you know the atrium is this massive open space with glass elevators that go from deck 12 to deck 5. The little girl leaned over the railing to look down, and in one terrible moment, she lost her balance. She fell, and when she hit the ground, her neck snapped. She died instantly. Ever since then, crew members and even passengers have reported seeing her. Some hear her giggling, others feel tiny footsteps brushing past them, and some, like the gift shop manager, have seen her shadow. I've always been a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, but after that night, I'm not so sure. Whatever he experienced in that shop, it was real enough to break him. He took days to recover and refused to work late ever again. And now, every time I pass by that gift shop or walk through the atrium, I can't help but wonder, what if she's still there? Watching, waiting, playing her eerie little game. Out at sea, surrounded by endless water, there's nowhere to run. If something haunts a ship, you're stuck with it. And if you're unlucky, you might just come face to face with it.